So in the last video, we have gone and done the rest of the texturing. We looked at the facade, the retail, the balustrades, and on my own, I've gone and added the rest of the textures, which we gave a brief preview to at the end of the last video. So if I go into my view mode here, if I press F3, and I just zoom in to have a look at what we've done. Basically, I've textured this with a very simple texture for the timber boardwalk. Have some grass textures here. This I've left plain gray, and then I have a type of a screen, timber screen texture going on here. Here I just have a reflective white material. For the material that is surrounding the seating, I have this meshy reflective steel. Now the idea here is that because we have such a large surface, we would want ideally, should this be a realistic project, which it isn't, we would want to get as much of the seating and as much of this shell to be like one large mesh, so that air could actually flow through all of the seating and people could feel these gusts of wind coming up from below. That would obviously lift up a few skirts, so we would see what the reality would be if they had to actually build this thing. Then the rest of the textures for the soccer net, I've gone and made a texture just with a simple grid like this. You don't really need a bitmap for this. I will show you if I bring in my material editor. Again, have a look at the soccer nets texture, and I'm just going back to the ones that are a little bit odd, and then we can have a look at how that has been done. All it is a plain white diffuse, which is the white net, and then into the opacity slot there is a gradient ramp. Now if I show you what that looks like, it's basically it creates a net like this. We create a solid interpolation with a box type of gradient, and we just make a very thin white edge, and you can see that we can actually manipulate the thickness of the net using that setting right there. So that becomes quite powerful, more than a JPEG would allow us to go. If you, however, do want to have a hexagonal net or some other odd shape, then you would have to start getting into texture opacities that you then create in Photoshop. But for plain square nets like this would be, you want to get a simple texture that is procedurally driven through the material editor without going through the lengths of repeating a JPEG or a GIF or a PNG, whatever you may have in the opacity slot there. Now we haven't actually gone and detailed the model for the goalposts or any of the other smaller things. You can do that. I wanted to mainly show you the large elements that would be seen from the really far shots where you get the whole city in and you get all the details there. So anyway, enough talking. Let's go straight into the lighting of the scene. What we're going to do first is, just before we light the scene, I just wanted to go over another element to this workflow that can be very important and very helpful depending on first of all your computer setup, and as well the amount of people working in your team and how you want things to be distributed in terms of your file and the components to your file. So what I'm actually talking about is really extracting in the detailed objects that you have cluttering up your scene right now. So what you can do is, at this point, if your textures are done, you can do a test render and you can see whether you're happy with your texturing. If you're happy with pretty much the main elements in your model, you can then go and select certain elements out and save selected them into a separate file. So let's do this as an example. What we will do it on is perhaps the planting. So let's go and select all of the planting and let's isolate that. So here you see we have all of these bushes, and it's quite a lot of detail. Now I see that we haven't captured the palm trees, so I just want to see where we have those palm trees hiding. There they are. Those palm trees actually stayed on the wrong layer, so let's select that and isolate it, and let's convert all of this to the planting layer. Now with everything selected, that is all the bushes and all the palm trees, let's go into File, Save As, Save Selected, and let's go into let's create an XREF folder. I'll create a new one since I don't want to overwrite anything. I'm just going to call this XREF models. And here you can go and type in your model name. So this would be palm trees and bushes, but we can just call it, let's just leave it at palm trees. We will understand what that means. And you press save. As soon as you've saved, hit delete. And out of there it goes. Now the same thing we can repeat on the other objects. We can, for instance, if this was quite high in detail, we could go and save that out. Or if we would want somebody else in our team to go and work on that, we could save or select all of these items, do the save selected method, save it as a different file, and we could go and pass that file to our colleague, and they could go and work up these pavilions on their own in their computer. And then as soon as they save their file, we will be able to bring in the updated versions of what they're working on. So for the palm trees, let's go and bring them right in. Let's go to References and XREF Scene, and you will see a XREF Scene dialog box. We'll open that up and we'll go to our model, XREF Models. Find your palm tree file, and you'll see you'll have a couple of options. You can enable it. Well, yes, we want it enabled. Make it visible, and then you can also tick box. This will just allow your graphics card, however powerful it is, to display less of the geometry in your scene. So you'll see that now we have a boxed version of this scene, which is on another file, and we can render it as if it was actually in our scene. This is pretty much somewhere along the lines of what the proxies are doing, where it's rendering a file which is out of your scene and basically plugging it right in. So what we will do now is we will repeat this process for the terrain model and the city, since that's the last item that I want to remove out of our main viewport. Just before I do that, I would like to keep the model, at least for the site which is directly around our site. So what I'm going to do is let's turn on the city model that we created earlier, and let's select all of the site mesh and all of the city model. We'll isolate it. We'll select the city model that we want to keep, go Control I to select everything else, and this is the part that we can now save out. So save selected into XREF Models, just call this context model, and save, and then delete. So what you'll see now is that you have your model and you actually don't have anything else around it. So what's happening right now is, as you save, your file size will start becoming smaller, and you will allow other people in the team to work on those parts that are on the outside. Just remember though that if you do leave something like this behind, then they will be missing that piece that you have not saved out. So let's bring that back in. We'll repeat the same process. XREF Scene, we'll add it in, add the context model, we'll make it visible, we'll press close. So now it's back in there. So if you don't need it, let's say you're not rendering but you're modeling something else, you can go back into the XREF Scene dialog box, select both of them, and then just uncheck enabled. And you'll be able to very quickly now remove those items, and your scene will become much lighter and easier to use and work on. So that's it for this video. You thought we were doing the lighting, but you just saw that we're not really there. However, in the next video, we will finally jump into the lighting part. Now that we are happy with having our model in place, our textures done, and our XREFs created of the complex parts of the model. So that is what we covered in this one. Next one will be the lighting daylight, and let's jump straight into that one.